Hello. Welcome to those watching this video. Thanks for letting me come into your life. My name is Patricia Grabow. I'm going to give an informal talk on my near-death experience. Couldn't come up with the title, so I just called it Dying, Not an End, a Revelation. Love and the present are the only reality. I will mostly be talking about my near-death experience, but to me, just as important is telling you briefly about the ideas of the books that came out of that experience. Those who have worked with me, including Christine Kaufman here today, know that we and everyone alive at this pivotal point in human experience are all catalysts for the great events that are happening on a global scale. But today, I would like to start telling you about what happened when I died. I have to let you know ahead of time that I cannot even come close to describing what death really is. I know it, and you will look upon someone who will struggle and at least try to communicate it. The only hope I have is to hit a chord in your own experience that will recognize what happened in mine. I may be much like the mythological knight attempting to climb the glass hill on a horse. The attempt will be, at the very least, interesting to watch. But first, for those who've not read my book, a brief description of what happened to me when I died might be in order. I often hesitate to tell that story since it very often makes me very emotional, even now. You might imagine what it was after the experience when I was crying 5 hours a day and wanting only to go back to where I was when I died. Please understand, though, that I ironically take the experience of my death every second of every day in my heart with gratitude. Deep gratitude. So, what happened? It was a rainy day in Kingston, a suburb of London, England. I had been in an impossible relationship that ended tragically and was trying to put my life back together with my then 15 and 13-year-old sons. We were going to bicycle through the parts of Europe in spite of the grief I was already experiencing, and we'd just gone to Stonehenge and were headed to our hotel in downtown London in the little Mini we had rented. I lost consciousness and slumped across the steering wheel from the exhaust fumes that were in the car. I can only imagine the terror my sons felt when it happened. I was gone. I later learned that our car swerved and headed to 2 gas pumps when we were hit head-on with a Mercedes-Benz. Paramedics that arrived on the scene told my children I was dead. I, however, was in a different place. I was in a state of bliss beyond any possible description. A white light of pure love, compassion, without any kind of limitation anywhere. In all time, without self, without identity. The white light, often described by over 11 million near-death experience survivors in this country alone, is not a visual light. It is the true light of love itself. It is the light you feel when you look on a newborn baby for the first time, or are lost in the play of a puppy, or watch the light bounce off the ripples of a stream. It is not seen. It is only felt with the intensity possible with love itself. And there's nothing even to compare. It was everything I ever dreamed of, and I bathed in its essence. I was that love. It was me, and there was nothing else. No Patricia, no self, only love beyond anything that could have been experienced. It was like being in love on a beautiful day with joy to the point where you simply disappear and are one with that experience. Then multiply that by a million. Part of me was to become part of it forever, like rolling like a child in a satin blanket in loving laughter, with a heart lost in its own being. It's still there, and I visit it mostly by using the white light meditation I was taught. But I do not stay. I see it everywhere, all the time. The grief at leaving it was much more painful than the sorrow I felt in the loss of the relationship I had experienced. For 18 months following my death, all I wanted to do was go back to what I experienced. I remember another near-death NDE, Mary Neal, saying that she could not write her books for a long time because she did not want her children to know not even they were enough to keep her here. I know what she meant. But I was not to be able to stay in that bliss. I had to leave that which meant more to me than anything imaginable. I simply came back and went from my heart exploding with joy to experiencing it as a small, shriveled lump until I saw my children. I suddenly woke up in the hospital. Well, my eyes opened. The rest of me was still leaving the experience, and it must be what it's like being born. I could feel gravity pushing heavily on every cell of my body. I could feel blood rush through every capillary, and light was so harsh, I had to close my eyes. Most of all, I felt a separate self that seemed more like a picture of me rather than the experience I just had. I understood that I was not the image out there for people to see. I was the light in my heart, and it was unlimited, everywhere, and all that really mattered. I learned later that the car crumpled up like a wadded piece of paper, and they told my children I was dead. But when I opened my eyes, a beautiful British nurse saw me in motion and ran to the gurney I was on and began the process of reviving me. When I was finally back, the medical staff wheeled my sons in. Chris had a broken arm and femur. And Tim, who was in the back of the car, had a bump on his behind, but was okay except for the wide-eyed look in his eyes he and his brother had when they saw me. I could feel with great maternal compassion what they had been through and desperately wanted to comfort them and hold them. But I couldn't move. All that could happen was that our eyes could meet. And it was wonderful. In simple terms, I was eventually told that I'd gone through death so that I could do the 4 books that would allow the world to understand the nature of the present time, the nature of love, and what the experience I had with death was in preparation for what would become the human experience for the next 100 years. For those of you who have died, you know there is no death. You are just present, as you are now, in the presence of the presence. The road to doing the books was complicated and involved in being led to those truly great beings who would help me survive in spite of myself. I was to grieve as I never had in my life, always wanting to go back to the experience I had when I died. I produced the first 3 books in a way similar to a book called A Course in Miracles. The first one was a book called Passage from Fear. The second one was Passage from Karma, The Coming Release from Sin and Repentance. And those came in within months of my death. That was a mouthful and about obedience to the guidance that literally kept me alive during that period. During that time, interestingly, I could not, for example, experience any beauty. I know beauty now that it is emotion. I was guided to the Teton Mountains, one of the most stunningly beautiful parts of this earth, and was entirely unable to see them for the beauty they were during that time of grief. The third book The immortal now, the ascension, and the nature of the present time came later. And then, in obedience to the guidance I was given, I wrote the story behind the book, Love to the Millionth Power, a woman's journey from death to love to the immortal now. So, now that I've just briefly described my death, as any NDE will tell you, since they know there is no death, I am only describing consciousness in the present, always. And I'm describing that consciousness in the present. So how does that work? I'm beginning to understand the messages I was given. We live in the moment, not in time. And somehow our story and all that we go through is the only thing that exists. And it exists within the heart, without judgment, without duality, or fear of death. Of course we cannot understand intellectually. We know, we feel, we are, we connect, we care, we hug, we laugh uncontrollably at times. We love beyond measure all the time. It's simply true. As the Immortal Now put it about our nature, you are a being of light. You are a being of love. That light, that love does not change. It is more permanent than a rock. It is more permanent than the stones upon the earth. It is within its own nature, unlimited and permanent. You will see this, and the world transforms itself. So, please bear with me. I'd like to flip through some of the quotes from the third book, The Immortal Now, that I did with my wonderful friend Christine Kaufman, so you can get a flavor of what's being said in those books. I will have them on the website, The Immortal Now. Just experience them for a brief moment, like a sunset, as a brief connection with words. The books have become only my friends when I need them, kind of like a childhood companion or a parent when I'm lonely or lost or want to gain understanding that I experienced when I died. I go to them. I got a call last month from my dear friend Rosie Porter. She asked me to send books. She was feeling frustration and just needed to have them with her. I dearly love Rosie and understood what she was asking for. But the books are very private, really. So I'm going to just read some of the excerpts from the book The Immortal Now, which has 12 chapters. And I'm not going to read from each chapter, but the rest of them are on the website. So if you want to look at those sheets too. The first chapter is on peace, and here's a quotation from that. This is a time of great awakening. There is no life beyond the life within. And that's a really tough concept to really understand, but there really is nothing else. The second chapter is on the nature of the present time. One of the quotations from that said, one would have to be a quantum physicist and beyond to truly understand the nature of the present time with your language in order to use the language to translate into the terms that are necessary to really feel what the present time is. It's the moment when you're hugging a tree and suddenly you are present with the tree and you're gone. The third chapter on The Immortal Now is the nature of love. One of the quotations is, you cannot discuss the present time without discussing what love is. They are completely one with each other. One of my favorite chapters in The Immortal Now is the chapter on the nature of truth. By the way, it mentions that a lot of carnivores are leaving because we are moving into this state of love. The reality of truth is not abstract. It's very specific. It's very enlightened. It is unencumbered. That which is true is not bound by any dimension, any life form, or any place. That which is true exists in and of itself without any kind of physical, mental, spiritual boundaries. It is accessible at all times because it exists without time. That which is true is what is freeing humanity. And chapter 5 is the nature of life. Chapter 6 is earth changes. And I like this analogy of this one. It is like a renaissance. It is like a breakthrough. It is a moment in which the chicken emerges from the egg and discovers the world beyond the egg. It is what is happening with consciousness at that point. It is the ascension. The chicken remains a chicken, but the perception of the world is beyond what the chicken could have imagined as the chicken existed in the egg. Chapter 7 is life within life, and it uses an analogy of what humanity is going through right now is like the blossoming of a flower. When you see a flower blossom, it takes tremendous energy for the flower to blossom. All of the energy of the flower goes into that blossom. It works hard to create beauty, the color of the blossom, the life of the blossom. So it is with life at this point. It's taking all of its energy to create the ascension, to create the blossom, to create this transition. And another concept that just means so much to me is chapter 8 is the nature of the singular moment. Because one of the things, if you've been through a near-death experience, you know there is no death, there's only consciousness, and there is no time. You'll see that the moment is truly that exists within the continuum of the present time. The moment is the building block for everything that happens. And that's that moment you love somebody. And then you visit it again. And you have those moments in your life. You don't have all the sequences in your life, but you have those moments of a first kiss or a child taking your hand. It is a creative tool from which the world has begun. The image in the mirror is created by the moment with a continuum of the present time. It is important for the whole realm of physics to begin to understand what is really termed the moment. It is important for them to explore it within life itself. Chapter 8 is love is power. Love is the only power beyond any human power or planetary power. It's simply the only power. And chapter 10 is the search for reality. And chapter 11 is the dreamer and the dream. And this is another chapter I like very much. You will see that the way is becoming clear for those who are understanding the nature of the present time, the nature of truth, of being, and the nature of their power as individuals. It's like looking into a beautiful well of water and seeing all that is reflected back into your eyes, which is back reflected into the water. So what exists is you, and that back and forth. And that is where existence is. And you know that because you know that when you died. That's all there really is. And chapter 12 is the way, the truth, and the life. You'll see that the world is ready for this work. It's anxious for this work. It is a shift in consciousness. It is difficult to articulate, but nonetheless, it is true. So just thank you for paying attention to this video. I just note while I'm talking about the books, Christine and I are to begin an 85-page book. It's already told us a number of pages on global warming so that humanity can understand the events that are transpiring from the perspective I had when I died. My friends who have worked with me in the past are looking forward to the book, the same kind of adventure that the other books were. So thank you for being here.